Welcome to Tales from the Golden Imp. I am Joe Craig, the Impish Skald. Last time we witnessed the interrogation of Slagg, the Goblin Vanguard leader. We sought out information about the blacksmith Durin, and the reports came in from the countryside with dire news. There was also talk about Calisto, Skald, and the Sentinels. We continue as our group chases this goblin horde. Let's see if they can stop the wagons on their way back to the goblin nest. In this continuation of the Calmbringer cycle, welcome to Tales from the Golden Imp. Episode 3. Heroes Answer the Call. Hey, wait, the road goes that way. Where are we going? Regos called out to Maris as the hunter takes them off the road and into the wilds. Maris knew these trails well, and he knew this route would get them ahead of the wagons if luck held with him. Regos was out of his depths, and it showed. This was the territory for the local hunter now, not an educated wizard. Maris led them along the deer paths through the mountain passes. They were approaching the tree line where the trees would give way to shrubs, before giving way to rock and snow. This would lead them to Godric's Pass, or close to it. They would have to think on their feet as they traveled, though, to get ready to improvise something. They had to stop these wagons. Dandros called over to Regos. Listen, I trust Maris knows what he's doing, and besides, we have to keep up. Keep breathing is the key. Just keep that magic ready of yours. We may need it yet. They continued to run, trying to keep up with Maris. The hunter was traveling on instinct more than experience. He didn't know exactly how fast the wagons were traveling, how many hours they were behind them, even where this trail would lead them to. It was heading up the mountain towards Godric's Pass. If luck was with them, the Goblin Cave would be on the other side of the pass. The pass was right at the elevation where the trees ended. There were a tall tree or two there from memory. They could drop one of those trees over the road, and that would hold them up for sure. Worst case, they could drop the bridge. There was a temporary wooden bridge in place, while the permanent stone one was being rebuilt. With this trouble, though, it was likely the case that the bridge crew met a damned fate. That wasn't the end of their troubles, though. The leaves were still on the trees, but they were beginning to fall. The mountains were beautiful this time of year, with a wide array of colors from the trees painted the quilt over the mountains. The trouble came in the fact that stealth here would be difficult to say the least. The leaves were dry, as they have had so little rain over the past weeks. As they ran through the mountain trails, leaving crunching underfoot, it was a constant reminder of the difficulty they would be facing if they needed to sneak up on the group. They had to use the sun, though. They had so little time. If only Maris had more information, he would know what trails to take to get them back in the key locations. But off they ran, and little did they know the goblins were expecting trouble. The hours passed, and the sun raised to its peak in the sky. No sight of the convoy yet, but Maris was feeling good about things. That is, when they heard something they were not expecting. The thwang of a bowstring releasing an arrow. Before they could react, Maris took an arrow to the shoulder, pinning his pack to him. Heartbeats later, 3 more arrows loosened, from the rear and from the sides. Regos dropped on sheer instinct, and that momentary hesitation was all that he needed to feel an arrow whiz past his head. Jaina was also a mark, and her armor paid for itself with the arrow deflected off of it. Alas, Meg was hit as well. With his wounded shoulder, Maris drew an arrow from his quiver and loosed that arrow of his own. The arrow flew through the brush and the trees, striking the archer that wounded him straight in the heart. Regos scrambled for cover while Dandros pulled Meg to safety. Jaina dropped her pack and darted straight for a pair of goblins that were posted next to each other. As she did, her glaive began to glow in hand. Both the goblins took aim on Jaina and loosed arrows. As the arrows were trained to Jaina, the glow from the glaive began to form a shield in front of her. She thrust her glaive forward, launching the shield into the arrows. She then jumped forward with a downward strike, cleaving into the goblin on the right, dropping him with ease. She then used that momentum to strike the bow out of the hands of the left goblin. More bowstrings sounded, but Jaina couldn't concern herself with those. From the sounds of things, Regos may have taken an arrow. That Regos did, but it was in an inconvenient location more than a dangerous one. Through his calf muscle, that would slow the wizard. Regos leaned on his training and produced an arcane bolt of energy that streaked back to the archer, dropping that archer as well. And a gurgling sound pointed to Maris ending that final goblin attacker. Dandros was already in the process of removing an arrow from Meg and tending that wound. Maris hissed to the group, "Patch up everyone else. I'm going to scout ahead and see if we are close to the wagons. You can fix me in a minute. Nothing but an annoyance right now." But with a nod from Dandros, Maris was away. Cutting through the woods, off trails toward the road, the hunter stalked. Though he was big, he spent much of his life in the woods, and he knew how to make his feet light. He just had to avoid the sticks and the twigs to give away his location. Low but fast, he cut his way through the oak and the elm. He cut around the pine and the fir. With a smile, he heard the sounds of a camp. Closer he stalked, avoiding a couple more ambushes as he went. Maris stopped as soon as he could see the camp below him. A mule, it seems, was the reason for the stoppage. She was foaming from exertion. The purple-eyed goblin was tending to her. They had pushed these beasts of burdens to their limit, and they would have to stop and rest them before they could continue. Analyzing the scene pointed to a very low number of goblins here, and none of the captives. All the beasts of burden were here, and all the wagons seemed to be here as well. They did have trouble, though. 4 giant trolls. That would be a fight they would not win. All the wagons save one were loaded. The wagon that was not loaded held troubling sights. Bloody rags. It looked as if some of the other captives were treating Durin's wounds. Maris knew the easiest way to slow the convoy would be to do harm to the animals. But he would only do that if it was a last resort. Not wanting to stay long, he knew that they had time to get ahead of the wagons. But they would be hard-pressed to get ahead of the goblin horde and their prisoners. The town needed the grain from the wagons to survive the winter. The arrow in Maris' shoulder was giving him more grief than he liked to admit. So it would be back to Dandros for some healing. He would have to think on his way back to the others. All patched up, Regos wanted so much to light his pipe and enjoy some tobacco, but he knew just how bad of an idea that was. His vices being what they were, he would have to suffer in silence while they waited for Maris to return. Dandros was truly skilled at healing, and it was a pleasure to watch him work. Regos never understood the divine magics. Arcane magics made sense. It was a combination of formula, symbology, and the force of will. Yes, the divine had the force of will in the form of belief. Yes, it had symbology. But the formulas that made the arcane predictable, it lacked. He could not doubt its validity nor its potency. It just didn't make logical sense to Regos. Regos questioned why he was here for about the 1,000th time. He was looking for ways to advance in his studies. How would saving some villagers from a goblin raid accomplish that? The challenge that they posed was that of numbers. Goblins were feckin', to say the least. Many of the races had lost vast numbers during the dark days, but the goblins were better at rebounding from such losses than humans. Humans were quite fecund in their own right, but not like goblins. Rabbits had a hard time keeping up with goblins. pipe in mouth, out of habit more than anything else. Regos found himself pondering, even more so what they would have to do when they found this blacksmith. His brain was telling him how bad of an idea this whole scheme was shaping up to be. But something inside him told him that they would be diving into that cesspit before the night came again. The trick was to figure out how to come out alive at the end. His spells were nearly spent. He only had his most basic spells to rely upon. Well, that and his wit. And, he didn't think goblins would care too much for his wit. Jaina broke his reverence and contemplation. Why are you here anyway? Meg, I can understand a lot more. But this doesn't seem to be something you would normally do. With a smirk, I was sitting here pondering just the same thing. Why am I here? Well, it's complicated to say the least. Doing what's right always gets me into the most trouble. I've got tenets that I live by, and, well, prisoners are something that I can't abide by, especially innocent ones. Put that right up with someone that collects books but refuses to read them. No greater sin than wasting knowledge. But no, this is right. This is what needs to be done, and I'm here, so I might as well do it. And that's what I keep telling myself. Dandros piped in with a question towards Regos. What rank wizard are you anyway? You don't wear the robes of a school, but I only assume that you're a learned fellow. Regos winced at that. Should have been a journeyman or a master journeyman by now, but alas, I'm nothing but a dropout nowadays. There was pain in his words, and a half-truth that was buried deep within the phrasing. Like picking at a sore that was not yet healed. It didn't bleed anymore, but the pain let you know that it was still there. Meg chimed in. This all sounds like the start of a bad joke. Starting off with 2 wayward scoundrels and 2 priests. All we need is a bar to walk into and we're set. Looking over at her, Dandros asked her a question that only a follower of Belden could phrase so stoically. What's your craft, Meg? My what? Your craft. Everyone has a craft that we partake in. That thing that is so close to your soul that it drives you to get up in the morning. That thing that makes you who you are so much more than what you have done or left undone. Your craft. Something about the way he asked the question left Meg stunned for a long moment. This was akin to asking what color underwear she wore. Not in a vulgar way, but in the intimate way that a lover asks. It seemed so personal, so raw. It took her aback. Normally quick on her feet, this simple question had her in a bind. Finally, she said the word that seemed to fit the question right. Survival mostly, but that isn't it. But I can't say what it is. Perhaps that's why I'm out here in the middle of God's knows where. I have skills, but they aren't my craft, as you say. Even swordplay isn't my craft. I don't think I can honestly say what my craft is. Flustered with the question and filling her face heat with embarrassment. Why do you make it sound so dirty anyway? Before Dandros could respond, Maris returned. Because he's a follower of Belden. Their craft is their religion. I've got good news and bad news, of which I'll tell you while someone removes this arrow from my shoulder. With the request made, Dandros got to work. Maris told them about the camp and what was missing from the camp. With the split in forces, Maris had devised a plan to slow down the caravan even more. And with the reduced numbers, it would take them longer to deal with than if they had the horde. Slowing the convoy would also keep the trolls from making it to the nest. But the missing horde and the prisoners meant that they would need to go into that nest to get the missing back. Maris's plan was simple. There were other bridges between where the convoy was and Godric's Pass. They would have to fell one of those bridges to slow down the convoy. The bridge in question was one that foot soldiers could still bypass, but it was there for wagon wheels. Merchants would be avoiding the mountain passes for the season soon. It would mean that one less trip from them, less coin in his pocket for winter. Winters were long and brutal here in the Dragontooth Mountains. Even during a good season, it was the constant wind that would cut through you. Sacrifices had to be made for the good of the people. Maris would have to go without coin, which meant a few less stays in the Golden Imp this winter. With the shoulder tended to, the party set off. They would be out of the trees soon. Taking out the bridge would take some doing, but it had to be done. It was the only thing the group could think of. Dropping a tree across the road would only be a minor inconvenience with the trolls still with the group. The sheer strength of these giants would make anything but the largest trees a minor slowdown. Dandros seemed to have a trick up his sleeve. He'd had to fell mine shafts from time to time, so taking down the timbers that supported the bridge was doable in his opinion. So off they set, and off they went. To the south of the Dragontooth Mountains, deep within the Great Falls Forest, a rider quickly approached the city of Feldus. Vyden Varfarrion awaited the rider, knowing of their approach already. Concerned about the horse, a rider was sent to trade horses with the message. Dire news was on approach. Good news never traveled this fast. Attempting to distract himself from what he could only wait for, he watched his daughter work on her footwork. Alana was nearly dancing between the soldiers attempting to strike her. The goal for the soldiers were to bring blood from the daughter of the throne, while for her, she needed to move across the practice field. Mind crossing your feet, Alana. It makes you easier to knock off balance. And you're not there yet, so the battle's not over. Vyden dressed in flowing robes over comfortable dress clothes, always wearing green and gold of his house and that of their founder, Halafaust. The Varfarrion family was descended from the god, and leading the elves of the Great Falls Forest was their role. Vyden had a wound on his side that bothered him since the day he got it some 300 years ago. It was truly giving him grief today. Did the rider's missive have anything to do with it? One of Calisto's sentinels had given him the wound. A wound that no magic had been able to heal. The wound is why he pushed his children so fiercely. He knew that his days were coming to an end. This wound he earned in the Battle of Edius City, where he crossed blades with Linsid and managed to survive for now. Linsid was the sentinel of death, for she was an assassin. He hadn't bested her that day, though the tales and songs stated such as fact. True, he wounded her with a mortal wound, but he did not see her body. Her body was not on the battlefield among the dead, and he would not accept that she was gone until he saw her body before him. He couldn't be so arrogant to believe that his blade dealt a killing blow to someone that had mastered the art of killing. He knew well when it was time to withdraw from the battle, and he knew she did as well. "Sir, the rider has arrived," said the armed guard in golden half-plate over deep green robes of the house. The soldier had said all this with a bow. She was armed with a spear and shield. Vyden turned his back from the practice field. "Very well. Lead the way, Sinisha." With that, Sinisha rose, spun on her heels, and guided Lord Vyden Varfarrion through the halls of justice, the palace that served as the ruling house as well as the temple to Halafaust. Built with alabaster, white marble with gold inlay, it was a sight to behold. The crash of waterfall that the forest was named after gave the whole place a stoic presentation. As the pair entered the courtyard, Vyden gave reverence to the statue of Halafaust before letting his eyes fall upon the rider. analyzing his features, colors, and dress. This man was from the Dragontooth Mountains, and that of the House Eldos. This was not Lord Ethan Eldos, so it must be his only son Nathaniel. Grim words indeed if such a person stood before him, wounded as well. The wound was being redressed by one of the priests of the temple. "Lord Nathaniel, I presume?" asked Vyden. Unable to do a proper bow, with the work being done on him, Nathaniel lowered his head in as much of a bow as he could muster. "Yes, Lord Eldos sent me with dire news. It's all in the letter here, Lord." Nathaniel produced the letter from his coat pocket. Vyden took it himself. "Very well, let's have a look at it." Vyden broke the seal of the boar. Opening the letter, he read it swiftly. It contained the report of the Goblin raid, the interrogation of Slagg, as well as the news of the numbers of soldiers they were lacking. It was a call for aid. Many of the townsfolk were abducted. Troubling news indeed. The actions here did echo history. These were stories that were heard when Calisto was first rising to power outside of Devalton. Locations that were about to be assaulted. Attacks like this to weaken and distract from the truest strikes. Calisto was wise and surrounded himself with his sentinels as powerful adversaries. Linsid, the assassin, had her way to solve problems. Karald, the soldier, had his. Skald, the beastmaster, certainly had her ways. Then there was Harrow, the necromancer. No, that's not fair to necromancers. He was something else, something much worse. At one point in time, he was a necromancer, but he long passed that. Calisto surrounded himself with masters of their crafts, and they listened to each proposed solution, and then he decided. Once decided, that was the agreed upon plan. They would contemplate the best way to use their abilities to set the battlefield in their favor. It was very well executed. Linsid was sent to eliminate Vyden, for his true power on the battlefield was through leadership. His mind was keen and he knew it. It made him overconfident at times, which is why he always listened to his advisors. Little had he known that he was thought of so highly by Calisto for Linsid herself to come for him. Skald returned. Well, this was news that he could believe with the dreams of late. Perhaps that's why the wound was bothering him so bad. The process that the Goblin reported would line up with the process that is, if a special jar was a soul jar. It would make it so Skald's spirit would be able to return. His last trip to home, he did meet with the Speaker of the Dead, and he had asked for Linsid, for he wished to hear her story. It had troubled him when the Speaker of the Dead responded, "That story is not yet concluded. Lord Necropus will not part with that story." It was on that day that he knew that this battle with Calisto wasn't over. It's why his smiths still crafted weapons. It's why he still kept his military ready to engage. Though it was done under a guise of a second battle with Feduria. Glowing purple eyes was a symptom of something else. It was a symptom of something with mind powers affecting it. Someone with the gift had purple eyes, but they did not glow. The glow pointed to someone being controlled. So someone was controlling the mind of this goblin. Skald would certainly be able to do that. It's how she was so effective, and how the beasts were used by Calisto. Finally, the ask. A most humble ask for aid, where Lord Ethan Eldos, the seat of the Council of Edius for the Dragontooth Mountains. That was his position in the Great Falls Forest. Of course he would come to the aid of Malatin. He would not allow Malatin to fall. He knew what he was going to do. but this was a great chance to see what his daughter would say. She had much to learn before her time to rule the Great Falls Forest. Muzzuria, please continue. Make sure our guest gets some rest before he leaves. I have things I must tend to. We will have to get some things gathered to assist. There is much to be done. Thank you, Lord Varfarrion. With a nod of acknowledgement, Vyden turned and retreated to the training yard. Alana was still training, now soaked in sweat from the effort she was exerting. Alana, Malatin calls for aid. They have had many of their people abducted and need our help to get them back alive. They claim that Goblin's done this, and the state of the Goblin leader is one that he had glowing purple eyes. What do you think we should do? Breathing heavy. Politically, we should send aid with the nature of the relationship with the city of Malatin. It is one that is the seat of power of the Dragontooth Mountains. Militarily, we should also send aid, knowing that it will likely do little to help the people in the long run, but they will recover. A nest of goblins acting in such a way need to be put in their place, and a show of force is needed. Goblins are more intelligent than many like to admit, so they will understand a show of force on multiple levels. Historically, the sites they are claiming is one that points to the echoes of the past and our personal family history. With the way you have been sleeping of late, we must investigate to make sure that there is no truth to the allegations. Personally, we send a few hundred soldiers. We will likely have to meet the goblins on the field of battle, and that loss of life could be great. With 1,000 to show the full force that we can bear, leave us open to counterattacks if there are people that could counterattack us. If asking what I would do, I would march around 500 soldiers to Malatin to support them and show the value of our allegiance, while at the same time send out rocks with baskets of soldiers to cut off the horde. In that way, the people of Malatin cannot do fast enough. We have lost much time, so we can only hope that the army is moving slowly for even that to be a valid response. Again, we would show our power and position. I think 700 troops would be enough to make the goblins pause, to solve this situation without loss of life. Vyden gave a nod. Very well. Are you prepared to have the blood of our soldiers on your hands? Are you prepared to look a widow or a widower in the eyes for your decision? Are you prepared to be wrong on your assessment? The question made Alana pause. That pause caused the briefest of pain. It caused her to fail in her training. Yes, sir. I would stand behind that decision. Where is my fault? Trust. Your only fault in the plan is what you are trusting. I will advise that we will do the same, but ponder on what you are trusting that is your fault. You heard her, Captain. Make it so. 500 soldiers marching and 250 flying in baskets. We leave as soon as possible. Time is against us, Captain. With that, Vyden left the orders in the hands of those that had them. He had a letter to pen for Nathaniel's return. He was proud of his daughter. She would make a good ruler someday, but she had much to learn. Rubbing aside his concern was about how much time he had left to teach her. Back in the Dragontooth Mountains, the party had made it to the chosen bridge. It was a deep enough gap that the wagons would not be able to cross, even with the trolls aiding them. The stone bridge was supported by mining timbers to keep the bridge secure. Dandros took up his hammer, and he advised everyone to stay clear. He began to knock the timbers free. With each timber, the stone bridge began to groan. With all the timbers removed, the 2 keystones had to be driven out. Dandros began to climb on the bridge. Everyone questioned what he was doing. The keystones had to be driven out, and he was far too short to reach them from the ground. It was logical. Only Maris was tall enough, and it likely wasn't strong enough to drive the keystones out. Don't worry, I'm not going to drive them all the way out. Maris, that final drive will have to rest on your broad shoulders. I'll get them loose, that way Maris can knock them free. Even if the bridge doesn't fall, as soon as weight's put on it, she'll come down for sure. They were designed this way to quickly take down a bridge to rebuild them. We dwarves are clever like that. With that settled, Dandros climbed to the apex of the bridge, and he started working on the keystones for the bridge. Driving them nearly all the way out made the bridge even more unstable. It was debated briefly if they should leave the bridge in that condition and wait for gravity and weight to do the rest of the work for them. After a short conversation, Regos was on the losing end of that argument, and Maris finished removing the keystones. The bridge collapsed cleanly after the 2 stones were removed. Well, that's what was supposed to happen. However, after removing the 2 keystones, the bridge stood. Shaky and unstable, but standing. The bridge clearly had a flaw in its design, which was the real problem right now. Regos stood with his lit pipe. Well, that was a tremendous display of dwarven engineering. I am very impressed with how well it felt. With a smirk across his face, he focused energy on the missing keystones. Regos bent down and picked up a stone. Concentrating on the stone for a moment, he focused his energy into the stone. He then chucked the stone to a keystone-sized hole. His aim wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to cause the stone to explode on the spot, dislodging the bridge from its moorings. The explosion from the stone echoed through the mountains as the bridge came down. As it did, a plume of dust blew in around Regos. He turned and offered a bow. Wonderful. Everyone is going to know that something just happened, chided Jaina. And you're supposed to be one of the quiet ones. Well, we didn't want to break a poor mule's leg, so this is the best we could do. No trees in the area to drop on this bridge, and it wasn't advisable for us to walk on the thing. Besides, I'm sure that sounds like that are not uncommon around here, with the shape of the mountains. What's done is done. There's nothing to make it undone, Dandros said while picking up his pack. Let's see if we can save these people that we're setting off to save. How about it? Maris led them down the road now. They had tracks they had to follow, and follow them quickly. There could be a world of trouble following them now. The question now was, do they dive headlong into the hornet's nest? Or try to drive the hornets out of the nest? But yet we'll leave that to the next episode. Today in the Lore Corner, we talk about a bar that we haven't visited. This is in the coastal city of Hallisport and is known as the Ear. It is located in the northern district of the city, but is very close to the docks. The Ear is a location that has a lot of history and has built itself a mythology over the hundreds of years that the establishment has been in business. To add to the mystique, the walls and windows have been magically enchanted to ward off damages from the wind, water, and weather of a port city location. These kinds of enchantments are only seen on schools of magic, and certainly not on simple bars. The bar doesn't actually serve food, but will produce meat, cheese, pickles, relish, and things of that nature for a traveler seeking something to keep their beer and ale down. The bar seems to always be open, with people coming and going at all hours of the day and night. Though it is much busier at night than it is over the daylight hours. Enchantments on the place do not end at the front door. The interior of the bar also houses enchantments to keep conversations private. It drowns out the conversations to a murmur. Common saying about the Ear is, "The ear hears it all," they say, But who is they? One walks into the ear. The atmosphere is certainly a different experience. The bar is situated with many tables, where one can see lips moving, but the sound is all wrong. The place should be a buzz instead of a murmur. Alas, a murmur it is. The sign over the door is a wooden human ear carved from a very dark wood that is held up to the weather quite well. The windows at the front of the bar are a checkerboard pattern of green and brown glass tiles. A heavy oak door keeps out the cold. To provide the warmth is a wide hearth that has greenback fabric chairs circling it. Between the door and the hearth are diagonally situated square tables, each with 2 or 3 seats per table. Rarely will you find more than 3 seats at a table. Along the right wall, upon entering, is the bar itself. No food is served here aside from bread, cheese, pickles, and cured meats. Ale and wine and beer aplenty is served, most of which is locally sourced from Durg. The dingy place certainly doesn't allow its patrons a poor beverage. The dark greens and browns mark the colors of the bar, with a sparsely spread of lanterns give the place a very dark look. When asked who owns the place, you'll get a bit of a laugh, and the common, owns the ear? Who knows? Runs it? Well, that'd be Caitlin, there behind the bar. If asked herself, Caitlin Fairweather will only say, only Cryptus knows, but the pay is good and restock orders happen before we run out of a thing. Many suspect that Caitlin is the owner, but wants to keep that a secret to herself, to make her a smaller target for the crime in the district. For the place's sound, it is kept to a whisper. However, it is evident that one can hear a great many things at the ear. Numerous a story starts with, well, I heard it at the ear. Spinsters, tale weavers, and good lore keepers can make a mint at the ear. Those seeking knowledge or information can also spend a fortune trying to find it. The layout of the ear is to maximize the number of seats for people to engage in games and conversation. Many of the tables have chess or go boards set upon them. Some tables are being used to play various card games as well. As one comes into the place, the bar is located along the right wall of the establishment. It runs the full length of the right side of the room. Behind the bar is small casks of ale and beer, along with 3 large casks. There is a wide selection and options here for the connoisseur of fine ales. The bar, like everything else in the inn, is a dark wood that is kept to a high polish. There's no kitchen, but there is a wine cellar which is accessed via a trap door behind the bar. The length of the bar is right at 26 feet long. Seats are spaced in pairs, 2 seats close to one another, then space between them, then another pair of seats. With these being stools that can freely move, it seems to be a patron choice. From there is a row of curtained booths of dark green leather, and the same dark wood that the bar is made of. The polish on these is also fairly high. Along the back and right walls, booths are repeated, leaving boxed center of space. That would be a perfect place for a dance floor. However, this space holds game tables. The tables are in a diamond pattern. There are 13 wooden pillars in the bar that break up the room as well. There are no mirrors in the place and no clear glass windows. The windows along the back and left wall are the same as the front, this green and brown stained glass tiles. Light in the place is low to give a very dark, secretive appearance. there have been several famous patrons over the bar's long and quiet history. Some say that it goes all the way back to a place that Kryptis himself opened. That said, the current patrons that one can find here as late as 727 after calm are the following. Machias Vendorf, dwarven male that is known to be a fencer of goods and a finder of things. Horace Liston, this half-giant is the doorkeeper and the bar's peacekeeper. At first appearance, he seems to be dim-witted, but don't be fooled, he is always listening. He's dressed in brown and green robes, and has a chain with a golden ear around his neck. Then there is Mary Handel, half-elven female with short and a mousy appearance. She is known for being able to find people and find information about people. She has her ears to the ground always. Then there's Talist Wastewalker, a green dragonkin female who is an information broker. She is known to travel far and wide in her information seeking, but she calls the ear her home away from home. And finally there is Tall Tim, a fine-dressed halfling Crixian who deals in secret information. He is a gossipmonger as well as keeps his hand on the pulse of the city's politics as well as noble house drama. With the nature of the clientele and symbology presented here, it is a common belief that the ear is secretly a temple to Kryptis. It is certainly a place where his followers gather. There is a wooden bust of Kryptis behind the counter of the bar, and a statement that the place may be owned by the god himself just adds fuel to that fire. If this is done on purpose, that can only be speculated upon. It is common belief that the place also was built by the god when he was still human. If human was really what he was. Many question even that about the god. It has only built the mythos of the bar over the years. Being so accessible from the Dark District, many will seek out the bar for illicit dealings. Somehow, local authorities seem to always turn a blind eye to the actions of the place. Well, travelers, thank you once again for continuing the journey with me. In this episode, we continue to follow the group adventurers deeper into the Dragontooth Mountains. As they were in pursuit of the Goblin Horde's retreat, our group set up a surprise to slow down the wagons. But where were the people that the goblins took? That is yet to be answered. We also visited with the elves of the Great Falls Forest to see if they would come to aid. With that aid, will it be in time to rescue the people of Malaton? And in the lower corner, we visited the Ear, which serves drinks aplenty but certainly lacks in the way of food. That being said, for patrons, I have a treat that comes from another establishment close by. That's the Steamy Tart. They are known for their cookies, tarts, desserts, and sweet treats. So, we're going to be doing a cookie from that establishment as your monthly fix. With the season being what it is, time for harvest, we'll be doing Trilla's pumpkin cookies. I hope that you try them in your kitchen. If you wish to support the podcast, giving it a rating wherever you find it would mean a lot. Comment and interaction of any kind would also be a positive thing. A thumbs up in the YouTube space, any interaction will help. Share it with your friends. If you wish to support the podcast a bit more and get the recipes of Calidria for your kitchen, as well as additional lore content, please support me over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/goldenimp. Signing up will give you access to our Discord server. I hope to build a great community over there. I can only do that with you. So why don't you join us and join the conversation? If you want to follow outside the podcast space, you can find me on Blue Sky at Impish Skald. With that said, I am Joe Craig, the Impish Skald. Thank you for listening, and remember, you've been scalded.